Kentucky Entrepreneur is made possible through a partnership with the Kentucky Highlands Investment Corporation, the University of Louisville, and Eastern Kentucky University. Funding for this program is through a special projects grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, received with the assistance of Congressman Hal Rogers.
A production of the Center for Rural Development, Somerset, Kentucky.
Hello, I'm Byron Crawford, and welcome to Kentucky Entrepreneur. On this program, we'll meet a Kentucky man who knows exactly what it takes to make it in the world of business. Bill Fortney is the sole proprietor of Great American Photography Weekend. That's a business founded 10 years ago to show amateur photographers how to get the most out of weekend-long photographic opportunities in the nation's national parks.
In America, there's about conservatively 400,000 people that are seriously interested in outdoor and nature photography. And because I'm very interested in it myself, because it was my hobby before it became my profession, I have developed a company called the Great American Photography Weekends. And that company serves to teach people how to become a better nature photographer. And in the last 10 years, we're coming into our 10th season now, we've seen over 7,000 customers. And we've taken them to every major national park in America, the lower 48 states, plus Alaska, Galapagos Islands, Africa, all over the world, in fact. And I'm very proud to say that a Kentucky corporation is now considered one of the very best nature photography workshop programs in America. I have been a professional photographer for almost 30 years. I started as a newspaper photographer, photojournalist. I then did commercial photography for the energy industry. I'm from Eastern Kentucky and did a lot of stuff for the coal companies there. And I went on to do medical photography. I was once the official photographer of the Washington Redskins when I did NFL photography. And then about 15 years ago, I really just got on fire about nature photography, and I've been doing that ever since. And I see myself more as a teacher than a professional photographer in nature. Even though I do sell my work, I've had 2 books now that are bestsellers. But most of my work is used for the purpose of teaching. I do sell some stuff, but I enjoy the process of getting with people and seeing them learn. The most recent book that I just finished about a year ago was a book called America from 500 Feet. That was my son and I flying an ultralight airplane all over the national parks and the wildlands of America, and we photographed natural history subjects from the air. And it was a very timely and beautiful portrait of our country, but from a totally different perspective than what you would expect to see. You know, it's really interesting. A lot of people ask me, they'll say, where do you live? Because I meet people all over the country, and I jokingly say, in a Suburban. I'm actually in the Suburban all the time. I mean, I drive 60,000 miles a year. It's 2 years old, with 120,000 miles on it. And it's like the 3rd or 4th vehicle we put that much mileage on. And, you know, I spend a lot of time, at least 200 days a year on the road. But the kind of business that we do is we have an office, and of course you have to do office things, but the most of what we do is in the field. It's working with people, it's talking to them, instructing them photographically, it's helping people understand the things that we're trying to teach them, and then the process of shooting photographs ourselves. It sure is nice for your office to be the Grand Tetons and Arches National Park and the California coast and the Pacific Northwest, and for a year the cockpit of an airplane flying over beautiful things. So it's you know, anyone who looks at what I do and says, well, boy, you know, I would love to do that, you probably would, but also think about there's the downside of being gone all the time. But that's kind of what the life is like. It's a good news, bad news story, but the good news is pretty good. It's been really rewarding to be a photographer doing the kind of work that I do. As I say, and I don't think I've been lucky. I think it's a lot more than that. I think I've been really blessed to get to do this, and I'm very appreciative for the opportunity to do what I do.
let me first welcome Bill to the program. And Bill, I'd just like to know how you got started. What a fascinating business.
Well, I just love nature and spent a great deal of time outdoors and have been a professional photographer for a long time. And when I combined those two things, I thought there was nothing better you could do with your life. So that's kind of how it happened.
We'd like to thank the many agencies here at the Center for Rural Development, from the Small Business Development Center to the U.S. Import-Export Center. They're all here to assist you in your quest to become a Kentucky entrepreneur. Bill, you mentioned something in the open there that I think is fascinating, and you said your office is outside, but you have to be working with people. That's really key to a lot that you do.
Yeah, I think any business, you deal with people. You have customers, and it doesn't matter whether you're selling them a product or a service, which is what we do. The service is teaching them photography. But the very first skill, I think, as an entrepreneur that you have to master is to know how to deal with people. And it's a very simple thing there. Really care about the customer. Care that they're getting what they need. And that's the first step.
I'm interested in knowing what's the difference between those people like many of us who have dreams of one day turning an idea into a business, who go ahead and do it, and then those who decide that they don't want to do it. What makes a person want to go ahead and move in that direction?
Well, you know, I saw a quote recently that I thought was wonderful, and for Kentuckians it's particularly appropriate. The quote said, "You will miss 100% of all the shots you don't attempt." I think a lot of people are afraid that they'll fail, and you will fail when you start to do something like this. There'll be small failures, but that's the road to success, is learning one thing at a time through failures.
Of course, everybody doesn't choose such a grand idea of entrepreneurism as I'm sure you and your son have chosen. There are many areas that I suppose you could have gone into, because you said you were an NFL photographer at one time.
I've done a lot of things photographically, and all of them, first of all, to make a living, to pay your bills, but all of them also because they were things I enjoyed. I just think that's the difference between a man that makes money and who makes a wonderful living is if you're happy at what you do. And I've chosen most of these endeavors because I loved football, and I loved Eastern Kentucky, where I did a lot of the coal mining stuff. I didn't care a great deal about going in the mines, but I did a lot of that. But everything I did, there was the love for the subject matter and the people involved, and I think that's the only way you can happily do this.
Bill, did you have childhood that led you into this?
Well, I grew up in Harlan, Kentucky, back in Appalachia, and it was a beautiful place to live. And I think I'm sure that I developed a love for nature at that time. I was outdoors a lot. Also, the flying part of it, I had a neighborhood friend whose father owned an airplane, and he used to take us to the airport and would let us watch the airplanes take off and land. And I was bitten. I knew when I was 6 years old that someday I would be a pilot. I took a long time getting to it, but I do think that those formative years had a lot to do with all these decisions.
I've never spoken with very many successful entrepreneurs who didn't have some spark in those real early childhood years, either from the parents or friends who surrounded them, or maybe a teacher who inspired them in school. Did you have role models?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the real values of living in this part of the state, particularly Eastern Kentucky, I think the communities are close-knit, and I think the communities care about the children. And when you're in school, there's a great deal of support for you in school, whether it's sports or whether you're in the band or whatever it is. And I think I had a lot of great teachers and had a lot of adults in our church and in the community that encouraged me. And I think when you're little and you're told that you can be somebody, you grow up believing that you can. And I think that's a very important part of what happens when someone goes on to have some manner of success in their life.